Welcome, everyone. This is the last episode of season 4, and I'm very excited to be sharing it with Tom O'Shea as the president of Marathon Jam and to be able to actually bring a highlight to the event that we just did last week and the difference that we've been making with movement and music. And I wanted to introduce the ideas to the end of the podcast series as we go into season 5, because I believe what happened in North Carolina really is a transformational opportunity for all of us on a global scale. And that's where we'll be heading with our topics in season 5. So to start off, Tom, thank you so much for coming back to the show and for being a part of this, and also for the invite to be a part of Marathon Jam's event. And I look forward to some of your insights that we've got coming up. So do you want to talk about being president now?
Well, I think first I'd like to talk about being thankful, being thankful that Colin MacLeod introduced us, being thankful that you were able to come and join us and bring your special talents into this event, which was a first time event. For those that don't know, Marathon Jam is an organization, it's a nonprofit, 501c3, tax exempt, gold star rated nonprofit made up of mostly musicians, well, musicians and music lovers for sure. Um, and our mission is to raise funds for disabled and injured veterans, first responders, and their families, and with the special aspect of healing through music, which has been our mantra. It's over here is one of our symbols of that and our workshop that you spoke about that happened last weekend at StoneField Cellars Winery just outside of Stokesdale, North Carolina, was just incredible in terms of being able to bring some true professionals that could help us really tease that out and experience it and learn from it as well. So thank you.
Mhm. I'm interested in one of the things that you said in one of our conversations, which was you had the mission for healing through music, and you've been following that, and it's been very successful in the stories you've had with the people that you've worked with, and veterans and first responders, and how they've responded to music, and also to coming back to instruments and playing. But the second part of what you talked about was that you sat down as a new board with a strategic plan, and that plan was to expand things. And so I just thought if we could start by talking a little bit about how that new vision created the space for this event to happen. I'd like to hear a little bit more about that.
Sure. Well, COVID kind of put a disruption into our marathon jam, just like it did so many other things around the globe. And so marathon jam for a couple of years was a little bit on the dormant side, as our hallmark of marathon has always been our 12-hour annual music jam where we get together and play together for 12 hours as a fundraiser for those charities that we support. So as we came back to life, we as a board felt we needed some reinvigoration, and so we did a couple of offsite retreats and kind of worked through a process to create a strategy map to help us shape our future, and be really explicit about what it is that we're why we exist, and what's our value proposition, and what are our critical priorities. And it was really through that process and more where we felt what we needed to put some real substance behind this idea of healing through music. And so from that it evolved, and into this first effort, which we all think was very successful. Again.
Hmm. Yeah. And so with the event itself, do you want to talk a little bit about the structure of it compared to what typically happens for marathon jam events?
Sure. I mean, the typical marathon jam events, are music circles, and our main event, the 12-hour marathon jam, is a just an extended version of jams that happen quite often in terms of musicians coming together, usually in circles, and the everyone participating. As it goes around the room, you get to declare what it is we're going to be playing. And the other um, active programs that we have are musicians playing in VA hospitals and clinics and nursing homes. Again, trying to bring that presence of and the power of music into those constituents that we're really focused on. So
Hmm.
the Healing Through Music event was quite different for us. First of all, bringing clinicians in that had real insight and depth. Um, Yourself and Colin MacLeod in your Unwinding Trauma program. Um, we also had Sarah Arnett, who's a very talented dance therapist, amongst other things, and Lyn Koonce, who's very talented in leading singing circles, which helped people find their own voice, and not necessarily even using words. So all of those elements were, I think, very effective at bringing out new insights and techniques and things that our participants could learn from. And we had some very diverse participants all the way from, our primary audience was designed to be music and creative arts therapists that work with VA first responders or their families, and also with seniors. But we also had, just regular caregivers. We also had people there for self-care, so the
Hmm.
collaboration of all of that mix turned out actually to be pretty extraordinary. And
Hmm.
there was a lot of moments of healing that were happening in each of the sessions.
I I know we talked about one of the musicians that had commented to you. He was now a marathon jammer
Oh, yes,
and
yes.
holding on to that title. Do you want to just share a little bit about that story and that ownership?
Oh, sure. His name is Steve, and he's been a regular hospital volunteer going and playing in the Kernersville, North Carolina VA clinic there. But it you could see a real identity adoption happening, as he came into this workshop, and he was committed to being, a full-fledged, Marathon Jam member. And one would have never thought that Steve would would have participated the way he did, because one would have thought that this would have been way out of the comfort zone. But I think it was reflective of the incredibly safe environment that was created right from the get-go, and when the Celtic fiddle guru himself, Colin MacLeod, invite just brought everyone into the workshop with his masterful fiddle, kind of mesmerizing them. What was that? The Pied Piper, with the
That's right.
the Pied Fiddler version of that.
Yeah,
But you could
yeah.
see it, just on the faces of the participants, because, for a number of people, the things that we went through were very vulnerable, and a lot of us aren't that accustomed to being that open and, with people that you don't really know.
And that piece of having the music start and invite people in, it takes that nervousness of we don't know what's going to happen out of everything. Because we know music. We know
Right.
music, we can respond to music, and now when we're sitting next to someone, we're both hearing the music. And now we have something in common besides why are we here and we're being nervous about it.
Yeah, it
It
was
definitely
truly
changes.
multisensory, because we were listening, we were seeing, we were even tasting, with your teas, so
Mhm.
we were activating, just all of our, or most of our senses as well.
Hmm. And that's a good point because so many people don't think about how tea can play a role in what's happening. And I was really interested in the response that happened because of the tea. And the first bit was I brought my water bottle. I have my own coffee mug. I prepared the beverage that I always have in the morning. That's kind of where people started in that little bit of guardedness. And then when we started talking about the role that the tea was going to play in the event and how the first tea was going to support. Now, actually, it is the first tea that I made for the podcast today. I was trying to figure out which one, but we introduced the idea of heart-centered living, flourishing when opening to our true passions in life. And so we were setting that stage right away for what are my passions in life. So far, I've been healing. I've been through grueling therapy, consequences, injuries, etc. And as a caregiver too, I've also had this whole new life given to me that I didn't necessarily choose. And we opened it up with this heart-centered living piece with the music flowing. And then we have, just by smelling the tea and then sipping on it, we can bypass the nervous system, which is ready to protect us. And we can actually go into the limbic system and link to the motor system and start to say, hey, we could be different. And it's safe to do that. And it was wonderful to see people at the breaks go, which tea is next? And then try to, okay, let me taste that one. And it seemed like the water bottles went off to the side, and that didn't matter as much as getting that tea in. I found that very interesting because the reception isn't always like that, but it did really open up conversation about herbs and thinking differently about what we're eating and what we're cultivating. So, yeah. And I wanted to comment too about some of the stories for veterans. They've had decades of anguish with different injuries they've had, but also the therapies that they go through. And hearing the stories of people 5 days a week doing 5 to 8 hours of therapy every day, it's grueling. And to see those people have smiles on their faces and discover that the therapy we were offering, which was the camaraderie and these different tools, could be fun, and they could laugh, and they could be silly, and they could be open. And I think Lyn did a lovely job of that with the voice, because it's very hard to vocalize and sometimes express how you're feeling, but also to be silly. It's sometimes hard to do that. And I think she did such a great job of making silly sounds and opening us up with how deep we could take the voice and how much volume do we have. Yeah, it was beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. And I think the inclusivity that everyone felt, because you could see early on that some people weren't really sure at all what this was going to be about. And you saw, a lot of self-protective kind of body language that was in there, and I saw those same people in Lyn's and in Sarah's, sessions just being free flowing and open and smiling. And, it was very clear that there was, permission to release and express. And you had to believe that there was some sense of joy and, healing for the moment. We'll see how long some of those openings occurred, but there was a number of people sharing that you know, they they faced a crossroads and kind of had a strong moment during the
Mm-hmm.
workshop.
Mm-hmm. I appreciated in Sarah's class where she was doing storytelling
Oh yes.
and creating new endings. So, so many people think that the story is the story and it can stay that way. But how lovely to think you can change the ending. You can make it whatever you want it to be. And
Right.
that can become reality. It doesn't matter if it was true or not. It just is the reality that the body needs to know so it can move forward to heal. But when she started walking different patterns, everybody said, I don't know how to move. I can't dance. My guard is up for this session. And then she said, well, do you know how to walk a straight line? Oh, yeah, I can walk a straight line. Well, can you walk in a curved line? Can you walk with boundaries? And she had all these lovely ways of getting people to interact with each other and then starting to cross with each other and interact in different ways. It was fascinating to watch how people realized how much potential they had within the movement and
Right.
moving them forward.
No, in the depth of some of the stories that were told. I mean, it was occasionally cathartic in terms of the willingness to share things that were not at all superficial, pretty deep.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
everyone else's um, carefulness or empathy, that tended to emerge was
Mm-hmm.
was really noteworthy too.
Mm-hmm. And everybody's story, it has its details, but in the end, everybody wants the same thing, which is that acceptance and love. And
Right.
so all of us can buy into that story and its ending, however it comes about, because we all do want the same kinds of things. Uh, that's, I think, where you figure out, yes, your story is unique because it happened to you, but it isn't unique in that we all have to figure out how to live with it and move forward from it. And how do we do that? Yeah.
Well, we are real optimistic in terms of trying to figure out, where do we go from here? We have a Marathon Jam board meeting in May, at which we'll discuss, the kind of a debrief postmortem, on the event, and then hopefully our planning team um, of all the practitioners and or the clinicians are seemed to be very motivated to continue, the involvement, which was great. I mean, our next day session over at Natalie Wirtz, the winery owner's house, was really energetic. So, well,
Yeah. And
stay
I,
tuned.
well, and I think the other piece too, as I've had a chance to reflect, Colin and I reflected on what was happening for us with using, look at that, say his name and he appears on a
It's
podcast just
it's
like that.
almost magical.
It,
Here's
I love
Colin.
it. I
Yeah.
love it. Colin, we were just talking about reflection, and I was just going to say, you and I reflected afterwards about using the unwinding trauma protocols and what that meant for us in our observations of how people responded to things, some of the feedback that we got with the significant changes that happened. And then we also had the feedback later on of how do we collaborate in a much better way with the other clinicians that were there, because we all got to know each other a little bit deeper. But now we get to play for this next year to figure out how do we enhance the tools that we already have that we know work well because of the feedback, but then how can we make that even stronger? Colin, do you have anything jumping right into the conversation for those people that might just be listening? It was just Colin is here, so do you want to talk about some of that
the
collaboration piece?
the idea of hover view rather than overview, when you're hovering over something and just standing back, seeing that magic of people working together, and the idea of reflection and the idea of magic, the water of life, just standing back from things and what can we glean. But until we go through a process, the detail, does anyone of our listeners do rafting, for example, like white water rafting, black water rafting? And until or navigation of going from A to B in the car, following Google Maps, for example, or taking a new route to work, and perhaps going downtown, and until we do something to have that experience, then we can stand back and we can say, that was just magical. And so, with everyone working together, and on our event, and just being able to sort of interchange, I really love the idea of, Tom, the way that yourself and Marathon Jam set up the 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 sessions, so that gave a freedom for people to move and groove, and just sort of see, sample something and something of something else, and different ways to approach things. And those different ways, I hope that our listeners will be smiling because to see the smiles on everyone's on people's faces at the end of the event or even into the evening with the soup and sing, and just how people come together, and that coming together, that sort of support for the year ahead, for the outlook, it's almost like it was New Year's Eve, and people had this time of lightness, and in order to be able to make New Year's resolutions about moving forward. And it's like being at a buffet, and then like you're the corral people, Tom, I forget what, and
Golden Corral.
the Golden Corral, and the
Yeah, they
idea of the
sponsored our food.
buffets that one of our sponsors, hello Golden Corral people, thank you for that. And the way that they have their buffets, like the buffets of inspiration, the buffets of choice, and in a way, maybe our event was also something of a buffet for people, a buffet of inspiration.
Very good.
Mm-hmm.
Michelle, people can see a lot of the material up on marathonjam.org um, / HTM, Healing Through Music. We're also posting up there kind of a highlights, a pictorial video that gives people a visual of many of the sessions that we did. And up there are a number of resources, including the podcast that you did with each of the clinicians. Thank you again very much for doing that, which gives people, even more depth into what we're trying to do with healing through music. And in addition to that, we have a resources tab where we've been trying to populate some of the real, powerful stories of healing through music. The 93-year-old, prima ballerina who, when listening to Swan Lake, just, immediately moves into the precise movements that she used to do when she was 22, as well as many others as well.
And the idea of reflection, and I think, Michelle, sipping your tea, from Cape Breton Tea Company, that's something with the affirmations, just different ways that people can, that perhaps different ways that it might remind people of the event. Some people are audiovisual, some people hear, some people are visual. I think I'm probably very visual. So the videos, Tom, I think, that's a really great resource. Michelle, some people are, sipping your tea, for example. It's just a real way to sort of bring people back to that just really fun event. I had one of the words that was used for the event was actually fun. And and some of the words that people, there was a part of the end of the day, so to speak, was asking participants, and what was one word that really summed up the day for them. And I thought that was very interesting as well.
Yeah, we had some incredible words that filled up a whole big poster, actually.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to put a word cloud up on that
Wow.
web page as well to kind of capture that.
One of the things that was exciting for me, the soup and sing at the end of the day, was watching the musicians' postures, because I had seen them at the events that had happened earlier in the week and watched how they sat to play, how they walked, how they held their instrument as they were playing, and then watching some of them after going through that whole day. And people were sitting up. They positioned their instruments slightly differently. They started to let that flow of energy actually come through the body. And one of the ambitions for me is to introduce to musicians the idea that when you're playing, you're healing. You have the potential to be healing while you're playing. And yes, you came together so that you could give music to other people, but you're also receiving yourself. But if you block it by the way you hold your instrument or the way you're sitting, you'll be defeating your personal purpose of healing. And it was so lovely to watch these different postures as they happened organically in the evening. And people might have sat down thinking I'm going to sit up taller, because they were in our workshop where I was getting people to pull their ears up and find out where is straight, where is my body when it's not holding stress on it. And that realization that I'm actually holding quite a bit and I'm really sinking. But then to see how they held that posture throughout the evening while they were playing, that for me was a real magical piece to be able to observe. And something went in, they don't have to work on it. It's just there for later, and they can continue to grow with it.
I love the people's smiles as well in the evening, seeing the smiles.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a YouTube video about Berlitz International, where there's a German gentleman who's on the Coast Guard, and it's an Australian captain of a ship saying, "We're sinking, we're sinking." And first day on the job for the young German gentleman, and the Australian, and all he hears over the microphone is, "We're sinking, we're sinking." And he goes up to the microphone and he says, "Oh yes, and what are you sinking about?" And that the idea of posture and what are you thinking about? What are you thinking rather than sinking? What are you thinking? And there was such a brightness in people's playing. That's what I heard in the evenings. Such a brightness in everyone coming together. And posture, I think, is a factor. The way that, the brightness of what people are playing, in the way that coming through in the voice and or the instrument. And the
Even
voice is
after
an
a very
instrument.
long day.
Yeah. And in our way, it was our own marathon jam. I mean,
Right.
the event in February, Tom, I think, that was very inspirational for
Well, they were
yourselves.
both 12 hours,
Yeah.
as it turns out. I had thought about it that way, but this was a marathon jam. We started it at 9 in the morning and wrapped up at 10 p.m., and had a pretty full day of multiple events.
And you've got golden pickers,
Yeah, we have golden pickers.
and I was just wondering about emboldened pickers.
Yeah. He goes
It
on like
was,
that all the time.
I also enjoyed the way that the room really quickly came together for people to share. So you had talked about that comfort that Colin, you had created by playing the music for everybody to come in. We also have the ambiance that the winery has. Both Robert and Natalie have created a healing space. They're very intentional in how they put the winery together. So that openness was there, but the conversations of people to people they'd never met before, but then that kind of just continued to evolve as the day progressed, was really inspirational, because if someone was vulnerable, there was, thank you for sharing that. It helped me because, or I appreciated the way that you did that. It helped me to see something in a different light. And we have that happen in other areas, but it often takes a lot longer to get there. And it seemed like we just kind of instantly came in. And we did open with about half an hour of introductory kind of activities. And I think that started it off, but there didn't seem to be anybody that was hesitant about jumping in. In fact, they jumped in ahead of instructions on how to do the first exercise. They
Well,
were
that's what
eager to
happens
go.
when you have a bunch of therapists in there.
And the willingness or the love of trying something, looking at something and looking at things in new ways, and that intermingling. And it's like the mixing of tea and wine, for example, in the evening, just new ideas, new possibilities.
Mhm.
And I mean, I definitely found, I think, singing with Lyn's singing circle, just all of a sudden, where did this voice come from? and that surprise, or what might come to mind with the playing of music, the combination of movement and music and movement, and in a way, there was also the playful music and movement and music in the evening as well. It was, um, I was wondering how many people were secretly jiving.
There was a lot of toe
No
tapping, I
telling.
can tell you from the back of the room. Tom, we had several sponsors who came forward so that this event was free for people. And I think that was really important because people could come and relax no
Okay,
matter where they are in their day. Do you want to talk about the sponsors and what that's meant?
sure. Yeah, we had several really, really very generous sponsors, which included Kintura, which is a retirement community organization that owns multiple different luxury kind of retirement. I don't want to use the word homes because it's more than that. It's communities, um, and we had a grant from the Crescent Rotary. There in Greensboro, North Carolina. As we mentioned before, the evening food was provided by Golden Corral, which is a national buffet restaurant chain owned by very good people. Um, it started with Natalie and Robert Wirtz, the owners of the winery, in terms of their opening their arms to this event. Um, and providing us, access to all those lovely spaces. So, um, our last sponsor, who's has sponsored our T-shirts, has been very important to us as well, is the Haynes Corporation, and they've given us uh, access to uh, 1,000, T-shirts that we use for our hospital volunteers, as well as Marathon Jam iron pickers if you play the entire 12 hours. And we also have these new Healing Through Music T-shirts as well. So great group of sponsors, and we appreciate them greatly. Thanks for asking. But we're always looking for more.
Exactly. And people that might be listening who are thinking about how they could make a huge impact. The ripple effect off of this event is within musicians, it's within the clinicians, and how we're going to be able to move forward working together. And then it's also the varied participants that arrived and who they are going to go back to and talk about the event with and what that impact is going to be. And our hope is it definitely creates a ripple effect out for other people to really start to think about what is the value of taking that music and matching it with movement, and how can we have fun while we're providing a space for healing to occur. And if that's something that you think you want to be a part of, then please reach out. And it's marathonjam.org. Is that
Or,
correct?
right.
Yeah.
And you
So
can
for
send an email to info@marathonjam.org if you want to share some ideas, share some potential sponsors, or get involved yourself. And those will actually come to me.
And there's a Facebook page as well.
There is a Facebook page for the Marathon Jam, and you can see firsthand, some of the good works that we do. I encourage you to explore the marathonjam.org website. Up in the about, there's a listing and a number of videos that have been produced that show our hospital volunteers at work playing music. It shows some clips from previous marathon jams and also highlights our Quilts of Honor initiative, where we collaborate with women that are making red, white, and blue quilts that enable us during our marathon jam to recognize and appreciate, special people, normally veterans or first responders, going through a ceremonial wrapping where they get wrapped by these beautiful quilts and get to take them home with them too.
So beautiful. You've added so many dimensions in the way that you're interacting with people. And I think that's what I love about the organization is it's not just about that musical piece. There's just so much more in the development of the community that you've really thought about. And I think that's what part of the magic is that Marathon Jam creates.
It is. I mean, we're playing with a purpose, and I know that the musicians get as much fulfillment out of going into the clinics and the VA nursing homes, and both of you have been there with us, and you can see just the joy that it creates, including for those people who have lost touch with a lot of their senses, but they still smile when they hear that music.
Mm-hmm.
It was lovely to, see, I think it was the hallway of, was it VA Kernersville?
Right.
And, see people stopping, sitting down or smiling, and just the change, well, maybe even the change in posture with people walking past when they heard everyone singing together or everyone playing together.
Especially joyful when one of them will sit down and because we'll always have a guitar or mandolin available for someone to play, and we've had a number of, I mean, gentlemen in their 90s, who've experienced, World War II,
Yep.
still able to play and sing, and that's just incredible.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. All right. I think we've shared a lot about the impact we can have when we come together. And as we move forward with the plans and as the board comes together for Marathon Jam to look at what is this going to mean, we will be having more that we're sharing out. And Colin will be on CelticFiddleGuru.com sharing from his platform. I'll be at thegreenwellcenter.com sharing out. And it'll also be coming through cambywell.org. As we also will be enhancing and sharing this story and bringing things forward so we can start to create a bigger ripple across our countries and the impact.
Michelle, can I say one more thank you for you and Colin for what you brought to this, but also for Sarah Arnett and Lyn Koonce and Robert Welch and Natalie Wirtz, who were the other ones that were part of our planning team. I mean, it was a great team. That collaborated, I thought, very well together to create something pretty extraordinary.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking forward to doing it again in 26.
Awesome. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for being here for season 4. And it has been a pleasure to highlight the people and the conversations that I could have this year. And I look forward to launching season 5 next week. Take care, everyone. And thanks for being here.
Bye.
Bye.